Welcome to Growing Golf, presented by Syngenta. This month we're talking to Bri Kenny, Manager of Environmental Science at Troon Golf. Bri is a biologist and naturalist based in Arizona and was sceptical about golf in the desert, but that was before she stepped onto her first golf course. Now she is a leading voice on golf and sustainability. Bri says, most people are surprised to find out golf courses here use just 2% of the state's water. Learn how Bri has helped change the perception of golf among a sceptical public and state legislators. Enjoy the conversation. Bri, welcome to Growing Golf.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Let's go back to the start. Your first moment on a golf course. Do you remember that? And what happened?
Absolutely. It was at Troon Country Club, so I had just taken a waitressing position because they offered a scholarship, and I was in the middle of a master's in biology. So for me, I was working 2 jobs and doing school at the time, and I just took that waitressing job just to go down to one. And that was the first golf course I had been on. But what was really helpful for me was we took an orientation tour, and they put us in one of those big golf carts and took us around the golf course. And I remember sitting in the back of it, and they're going through pointing out the mansions and who lives there. And I was just on the back, like, this is what a golf course looks like. I always envisioned them to be kind of the soccer fields and baseball fields I was used to, but bigger. So I was thinking blankets of flat grass. I didn't realize there'd be so much wildlife habitat, so many different hills, different types of habitat even throughout the course.
And you mentioned habitat there because your passion, wildlife, nature, you'd come from that background at university as well.
Right.
And so were you, coming onto this golf course, were you negative towards golf? What was your perception of golf before this first experience?
Absolutely. Because I've always seen golf as an outsider, and it's kind of funny that even though I had never been to one, I had this very strong opinion about what golf courses were and the people who worked on them. I don't know how I developed that opinion, but it's something that you kind of hear when you're not a part of golf, that they're just throwing chemicals down, throwing water down, and not being considerate. And yeah, I didn't think they really wanted habitat there. I just figured they tore it all down. And one of the reasons I say I got really lucky was Troon Country Club. They're one of the lowest acreage courses in the desert. So it's a really tough course to play, but when you're a biologist, it's a really fun course to be on because there's so much habitat weaving throughout. And that really caught my eye.
Did that create an immediate change of perception in your mind? Did you start to think differently? Were you interested? Were you curious about this landscape?
Yeah, I think curiosity is the best word. That kind of started the questions in my head. I was like, what's going on out here? How are they managing it? Are they paying attention? And so I immediately started talking to the superintendent and the horticulturist there and asking them questions. And I just kept asking them questions, and they kept engaging me. So one of the other reasons I'm really lucky that it was Troon Country Club was that, that habitat kind of changed. It was the spark of it, but the superintendent and the horticulturist really changed my perspective on what golf was and who the people that work in golf are.
I was reading a book quite recently by Bryce Andrews called Holding Fire, A Reckoning with the American West. And Bryce Andrews is a rancher, and he was speaking in the final chapter of the book. He spoke to a Native American woman who defined sustainability in a completely different way to the way he thought. She described as the traditional European perspective is almost taking as much as you can without killing it, whereas the Native American, or her perception of it, was that you give back as much as you take. And I wonder how, that definition of sustainability, I wonder if that resonates with you and with golf.
Yeah, absolutely. I think I might have to steal that and read that book. Yeah, I do. I feel like that is a very Western mindset. Even if you study the conservation of America, like that was kind of the mindset. Take as much as you can. And sometimes even to the detriment, like it doesn't even matter if it stays, we'll just take as much as we can until it's gone. So I really like that idea of her saying give back as much as you can, because that kind of switches it from just trying to mitigate the negatives to actually getting proactive about the positives.
And can golf be sustainable in that regard, do you think? Can golf give back as much as it takes?
Oh, that's a tough question. I think it can. It's going to take a lot of effort. We're not there yet, and I think that's okay to admit. Sometimes the industry, I think, is a little defensive and feels like we have to say we have it figured out. But even in my old field of wildlife biology, they're not like a lot of our organizations and projects aren't actually sustainable. We're still working on that, just in different ways. But I think we can at least get close. Maybe there's, debate whether you can ever achieve the perfect sustainable system, but I think there's room for improvement. So why wouldn't we reach for that?
As someone who's come from the background that you have in terms of being a biologist, tell me about some of the wildlife that you see around golf courses, the different troon properties that you go and visit. What's the wildlife that you see, and what excites you about that?
Oh gosh, I'm always surprised about what I can find on a golf course. I've only been on ones within the United States, but a lot of our golf courses actually do have endangered or threatened species. And so we work with agencies to kind of protect the landscape, or even having like population increases on our golf courses for some of those. So those are really exciting to me, because because we're working with my old field, the agencies, and we're helping restore species that are struggling. So those are the most exciting for me. They tend to be just a weird mix. It can be birds, reptiles, even mammals. And then we have a lot of breeding species as well. Those tend to be birds where we're protecting. They'll come in seasonally and we'll protect those areas for them. One of the ones that's most exciting is the Laysan albatross, which is on the Princeville Mackay course in Kauai. Like they spend most of their life at sea, so when they come on land, they're pretty awkward. So it's fun to watch them like struggle to walk and just waddle around. And then the whole course is set up just to protect wherever they decide to lay their eggs is where they decide to lay the eggs, and the course adjusts for that. So, I mean, I get excited about the birds the most. Everyone knows that about me, so.
So always with a pair of binoculars, presumably.
Yes, exactly. The reason I like birds is because they're the easiest to find. I can even just know what they are based on their call. And so the limited time I have on a property, I can get a species list of birds, and that gives me an indication of the greater ecosystem there, because then I'll know this bird eats this type of food, so that's available. This bird needs this type of vegetation for their nest, so that's available. So the birds are really my like cheat code for understanding the greater ecosystem of the golf course.
So you've got that knowledge and expertise. How do you pass that on? How do you share that? And also spread the enthusiasm, spread the love for this?
Yeah, I think having field trips is, I try to tell everybody, if there's one group of non-golfers you're going to invite to a golf course, it should be the bird watchers, because it's pretty easy to fit in a bird watching walk. They either want to be there at sunrise or sunset, so it's usually, if they're starting on the front nine, you can hit the back nine really quick and golfers would never know you're there. And the bird watchers are so passionate that it's infectious. And even when I'm on property, the guys will start sending me photos and be like, "Hey, I saw this bird. What is it?" And then I always see that as an opportunity to educate them. I'll say, "Oh, it's this thing, and this is something really cool about it." And I think just being genuinely passionate, I think, helps other people get curious as well.
We have the golf club that I'm a member of in the UK. We have there's an annual kind of bird watching tour early in the morning, a spring watch, if you like, 5 a.m. and we all go out and we have an expert show us around. And I have to say, I found it absolutely fascinating. I've learned things that I didn't know. But there's also then this sense of care that comes from knowing and appreciating, and it's wonderful to see other members, other golfers, then kind of understanding, sharing that information, but really caring for their little patch, if you like.
Yeah, Yeah, I especially love when there's, like a bobcat family or a road runner family, and everyone gets really excited about the babies, and they're very protective over them. I think kind of having those cute little cubs or chicks helps them feel an even more a greater sense of caretaking for that area and the animals.
Why does wildlife matter?
Um, yeah, that's a great question. I would say they matter because the more time you spend in nature, the more you understand how many connections there are between everything. And every species of wildlife plays a role in that ecosystem. So we want to support them because they kind of keep everything in balance for us. So yes, we have rabbits. They'll kind of take care. They'll eat some of the plants. They might also eat the turf when you don't want them to. But then you have the bobcats that come in and eat from them, and you have the birds and the insects. There's all a balance there. So you want to have as much diversity as possible because the more diverse an ecosystem is, the more stable it is, which means the more sustainable it is. When we drop down to only one or two species, that's when you get close to like a collapse, or it's an unhealthy ecosystem, which means more inputs from man, and that's really hard to manage.
So it's a little bit like that famous John Muir quote, isn't it? You kind of tug on or pull on one part of nature, but you're snagged against everything. Everything is interconnected.
Exactly. Yeah, and so I mean, even if you don't even have to care about wildlife, but if you have a healthy, diverse population of wildlife, that can translate to things like the ecosystem services for you, whether it be cleaner water or even healthier plants, things like that. Just having the wildlife can translate to a lot of human benefits that you might not even understand are connected.
You mentioned water there, and we're at GCSAA in Phoenix, Arizona. And for a lot of people, you used the word outsider earlier on. You were an outsider to golf, and Syngenta's recent market study on social media found exactly that. People were either insiders or outsiders. There were outsiders who were part of golf as well, but a lot of people just feel, frankly, outside. And to many people who are outside, they would look at golf courses in the desert and they would think, how on earth can that be sustainable?
Right.
Because of water. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Can it be sustainable?
Yeah, I think it can be. We have to be very careful about it in the desert, obviously, because water is more limited in this area. But I think a lot of this perception from the outside is ignorance, right? It's like me. I always thought you want to throw more water down because that's how the grass grows. And I never thought, because I had never golfed, I never realized, oh, if you overwater the turf, it's soft and golfers don't like that. Or it gets squishy or it gets muddy. It creates disease. So I didn't think about all these reasons why golf courses didn't want to overwater. I just always thought they wanted it lush. And to me, lush meant overwatered. So I think if the public could understand how much thought goes into watering and how much technology they use, where they can, track the evaporation every day and know exactly the amount that they need to replace. I think with these technology upgrades, reducing turf is a big one too. So I think desert golf might need to look a little bit different than other parts of the world. But I think if we do embrace those differences, it can be sustainable.
In Arizona, a couple of years ago, 2022, there was an article that appeared in a local newspaper in Phoenix saying or highlighting that some golf courses were taking too much water. They were overextending their permits. Some of the national media picked up on that, and indeed some of the golf media also reprinted that story. And that seemed to set off quite a chain reaction because it wasn't factually accurate.
Mm-hmm.
And there was quite a strong response. Tell us what happened.
Yeah, so Arizona is my home, so this is kind of where I get the most involved in the water, just because I'm here and I'm I'm a citizen of this state, so I have a personal interest as well as a professional. So, and I do the water data for the Arizona Alliance for Golf. So I know these numbers probably more than anybody else. And that article hurt because the journalist was from outside golf. He was actually doing a fellowship from Hungary. He was just visiting here for about 6 months. And he was looking at the numbers, not even understanding golf courses and reporting on that and not realizing that he was inaccurate. So we wrote a response as the Alliance back to them, just kind of pointing out some of the really obvious, like these are some of the issues where, like he was saying, for example, one golf course doubled its water use. And anyone in golf would know you don't just suddenly double the amount of water. What happened was they added another golf course. So they weren't actually over their allotments because their allotment rose because they had a new golf course. So it was things like that are easily fixable if you just Google the property, and he didn't even do the due diligence. So we kind of wrote a response just addressing some of those obvious mistakes.
And how did that response land with the community, do you think?
We got really positive feedback from the golf community, and even recently I've been meeting with local legislators, and I didn't know, but they had read it as well, and they've been giving us positive feedback and said, when I saw your response, I realized I should maybe think about this differently, because when I read the original article, I was like, oh yeah, this is terrible. But then when I saw your response, then I saw the other side to it. So those responses were great. The paper, unfortunately, wasn't too happy and dug in deeper and didn't want to admit any mistakes.
Coming to the Arizona Alliance for Golf website, for example, there were two just stark facts on the homepage, which is that golf generates $6 billion of economic value for Arizona, and less than 2% of the water used in the community is used for irrigating golf courses, which are, when you see the facts, it's pretty straightforward.
Yes. Yeah, and that's one of the tough things about data is you can manipulate it to look any way you want. So you can easily show the data to make it look like golf is using a lot, but I think we're really proud of those stats because there's not really another industry in Arizona that's even close to the economic return on water used. And so, yeah, I think it's something to celebrate. And most people they think golf is using 30 to 60%. Yeah, I'll even ask golfers while I'm out on the courses. And so they think golf is using 30 to 60% of the state's water. And so when I tell them, no, it's actually 2%, they're very surprised by that.
Some of the other facts that came out was that golf generates, and again, this is in Arizona, 66,000 jobs, $2.3 billion of wages, and with a kind of a payback of $520 million in tax. So, there's a significant economic benefit from, in terms of economic benefits and jobs that otherwise wouldn't be there.
Yeah, and I think it's really important for us to kind of, back to the sustainability, try and show the benefits of each one of those main pillars and the people, planet, profit, because that resonates more strongly with some people, and other people that they don't even care about the economics. So if we can talk about the social and the environmental impact, that hits harder. But interestingly enough, we had a recent, I guess you would say, like hearing within the state, and both Democrat and Republican representatives were both referring to these stats of why they supported golf in the state. And it's not, and these days we don't really have Republicans and Democrats agreeing on too much. So we were pretty excited that they were agreeing on the value of golf in our state.
So it's interesting as a form of communication. And interestingly, perhaps in this case, you had to respond or to kind of mitigate the circumstances, but being proactive, getting out there on the front foot first. Maybe this data was already there, I don't know, but
some are and some aren't, but yeah.
But is that a solution for golf, do you think, to have these numbers, to show, to demonstrate? And I guess the numbers are one thing, but then it's the stories, isn't it? It's kind of exactly what you were saying about on the golf course. the wildlife you see, all the things that are happening, and the joy it brings people as well.
Yeah, and so we're even planning to do some field trips where we can bring some of the regulators out, even some university staff, people that may have never been on a golf course either, like myself, just to show them what actually happens. They can meet the people, they can see what we're doing, and I think we've done that with small groups already, and it's just like me, where you can instantly see those questions starting in their head, and they're kind of like, oh, maybe I don't know everything that's happening here. So I hope those field trips will help with that as well, so they can see it in person.
So talking of other changes in the industry, you've been involved in various programs and experiences to encourage more women to be in the turf industry. And Syngenta has been involved in Ladies Leading Turf and various other programs as well. But it's still a very small number involved, and we mentioned 2% earlier, and I think it's something like that in terms of women in turf. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think we're almost up to 3%, but it's 2 to 3%, yeah. Or at least that's our best estimates based on professional membership of women in the agronomy side of the industry.
I think I read that you were talking about how that compared with conservation, and how historically women weren't part of the conservation movement, or had a low there were low numbers who were kind of registered members of conservation groups, but how that changed over time to something like 35% or so now. Mm-hmm. Is that what needs to happen in turf, do you think?
I mean, I hope it does. It's funny coming from the biology world, and where they kind of faced that women's movement before my time, and I heard about it. But reading that recent article in one of our professional magazines, it resonated with me, just because they said it was 2% back in 1944, and here we are in turf where women are only 2% in 2023, 2024 now. So I feel like there's a lot to learn from the conservation biology, but one of the main things is just helping women understand that it's a career path, because even I didn't know conservation biology was a career path when I was younger, and I found it in college, and then I found turf after college. And so I think the more that women can see these opportunities early on, I think the more women will want to be in this field. And which is why I think a lot of us women, whether we like to or not, we just put ourselves out there in every format that we can, just in the hopes that if one girl sees it and wants to join the industry from it, it helps.
The volunteer programs at the Women's US Open.
Being with the women is one of the best things. They're so uplifting. I always say they're just good for the soul. They bring this energy, and even I'm typically a low energy person, but when I'm around them, it's like I don't even need energy drinks anymore. I'm just like super energized. It's so nice to be around them. You're laughing more, you're happier. And then at Pebble, we were watching the wildlife every day, you'd look over the cliff, see the otters swimming or the birds come in. And it was just, there was a lot of cry. We all say we're not criers, but when we're together, we cry a lot. But they're happy tears.
What happens next?
Well, I think us as women have to take these experiences that we have and bring some of that energy locally. We need to reach out to our local communities more. Some have been starting to do, career talks at high schools and stuff. And I think a lot of us, we have our community within turf, but we need to be very proactive about reaching out beyond turf. And then at the golf course level, it's simply just making a space for women at the golf course. For a lot of us, especially the OGs, as we call them, the ones that have been around for a few decades at least in the industry, it's simple things like not having a bathroom, being told you can't do the job, being told you shouldn't be there. I think the industry has been changing where, like at Troon Country Club, I never faced that where guys were telling me I couldn't. They were teaching me how to mow and they were helpful, but there are things that kind of make you feel like you're not welcome, and not having a bathroom is one of them, because you don't even have a place to go. And it seems silly, but it makes a big difference. And making sure that a female has a uniform that actually fits and it's not, a dress down to our knees. So just making a space for them and making it known that you want them there and that you're considering their perspective as well.
And that's the important point, isn't it? It's kind of putting yourself in the shoes of different people within your teams, not just women, but if you want diverse teams, and the point of this isn't that you should be doing it or it's the right thing to do. It's actually good for business as well, because diversity of thought brings new problem solving and different perspectives on how to solve problems.
Exactly. Yeah, we all tackle things differently, and I think it's the same as an ecosystem. If you have more diversity of thought, you're stronger, and more diversity of perspectives, experiences, you're going to have a stronger team.
Well, Bri Kenny, thank you very much for speaking to Growing Golf.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed the show. We'd love to know your thoughts, so please do comment, ask a question, or rate the episode. You'll find more stories, insights, and case studies on syngentagolf.com. Until next time, goodbye.